All right, and finally, this story comes from Creative Block, but it was covered in a number of publications, and I think initially I saw it on Twitter from the Scribblebug, Harriet, who was extolling. So shout out to Harriet. NatWest apologizes for patronizing women by patronizing women. If you didn't see this, NatWest has launched a campaign that apologizes to women for having patronized them in the past. But judging by the tone of the campaign, it doesn't look set to change anytime soon. The campaign saw a man dressed up as typical bankers in pinstripe suits and bowler hats handing out letters in copies of TSYS magazine to London commuters. The letters apologise for creating a culture that still in 2019 has made you feel uncomfortable and unwelcome when it comes to talking about money. But one of the oddest things about the campaign is it's backed by TSYS, a publication that prides itself on providing content through a feminist lens. The front cover of TSYS showed a bunch of flowers containing £20 notes with a tag saying, "I'm sorry, we seem to have been using sexist imagery and language for the last few decades, but we're changing, honestly. Signed, Mr. Banker."
Doesn't feel like they consulted any females when they did this.
Well, I also think it flies in the face of what NatWest is purporting to do around female funding at the moment, because they've come out with a whole bunch of initiatives. So it seems a little bit kind of at odds with the new feeling in the bank for funding female-led businesses.
Honestly, I'm really confused. I'm really confused by this, because essentially, if you read the words all actually make sense, don't they? Actually sort of saying our behavior has led to huge financial, confidence gaps, that we're not treating people. All of these things are sensible, but somebody's designed this in a way to make it sound patronizing when they're trying to apologize for being patronizing. We've been talking about a dress like a banker day for 11FS for ages. That would be literally the guy I would come dressed as in terms of the bowler hat, the umbrella on my arm type vibe.
But that would be for Halloween, right?
I mean, yeah. I think we're looking at doing it this year, actually. So we'll more news on that soon, guys. But I think it's really a shame, because actually, we know those guys pretty well. And if you look at somebody like Alison Rose, who's over there, deputy CEO of the company, she is the probably one of the most senior, flying the flag for senior females in financial services. I just can't feel that she would have even seen this, or if not, then why not? And that's the worrying thing. To my point a minute ago about it's hard to do marketing well in big organizations, then this shows that even with very senior, very smart females at the top of an organization, people can still fuck up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sort of reminds me of when the leak of the redesign of the Halifax app came out. And it was actually a design agency that had shown it from somewhere else. When you have this massive ecosystem of suppliers and you have these massive processes, it is hard sometimes to get control of them. And I think that's a really good point.
But I guess on the flip of this, what we were just saying about CBA, it went through all of those rounds and had weird things added to it. At what point did somebody not see this through the NatWest sign-off process and go, guys, this is pretty fucked up, we shouldn't do this?
Processes are weird like that. Processes tend to worry about the wrong things. The committees worry about how the terms and conditions on the contract would be perceived, and you end up in a big argument about the minutiae, and nobody ever gets to look at the big picture and go, what the hell is that thing doing there? And I think actually it's almost damaging that because the nature of those processes are so distributed and are so big, the ownership is almost diluted to a point where it's hard to do that. 'Cause I completely agree. I imagine if Alison had seen this, she'd have been horrified.
But if you map this into, Monzo just did a TV advert, right? And Gary, you guys have just been on TV doing a TV campaign for Xero. You guys have got the tone. You did not make this type of statement. Just pointing out for anybody who haven't seen the Xero of the Monzo or the Monzo TV adverts, but you didn't make these sort of weird grand gestures in it that didn't really make any it reminds me of actually the Revolut problem that they had. The whole sort of "you okay, hun?" Yeah. Intent is so important in communications, and it feels like the intent in this was just off the mark.
Yeah. I think this is this is literally. A PR agency has pitched a bunch of ideas, and this is one of them. And the intent is actually genuine, and so like many industries, not just banking, the tone deafness that has been demonstrated when it comes to where women fit and the messaging and just like the whole kind of white male patriarchy, which is a whole other conversation. So absolutely redressing the balance is really, really important and wholesome, and we have to do that. But this looks like a PR agency has pitched a bunch of ideas, literally lifted and it's a good idea. Its intent is good, but the execution's not so good, and it just obviously hasn't had the editorial sign off. And so and I when I read it, I thought, how many women were involved in this? Because that should have been an alarm bell.
I was on the round table for that report. I don't think many of the people wouldn't have signed it off.
Well, and of course, this report. Do you want to just give a little bit of detail about that?
Oh, yeah, I was, and my thing was on financial education for women who are raising finance, because it is all about women potentially being excluded from the financial journey, whether that's lending or it's venture capital or other kinds of equity investment, and how can we change that? And NatWest, as I said, come out with some digital platforms now and they're moving into the space. So I was keen to get involved because I think it is about education. A lot of times I think people don't understand what's out there in terms of funding at the right time, at the right price, so they don't access it. But also there are other things around fear and confidence, et cetera.
But it's sad that, again, this will make the headlines, but, you know, the Rose report that those guys have come out with, and, you know, people like Wincy Wong over at RBS who are doing so much for championing females in financial services. And it's like, I mean, it kind of tarnishes... This tarnishes that in a weird way.
Because you have so many people you could point at and go, look how good they are. Look at that example that we can all learn from.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of weeks ago, after the report came out, there was a bit of a celebration because it's an all-party parliamentary report, and everyone who was contributing to the report was there, and everyone talking about the things they were going to do. And I felt a sense of, when she was there, Alison was there, this is a beginning. And now things have to happen. It's great to put it out there. It's great to report on it. It's great to see what we all said, but things have to actually happen over an extended period of time or nothing will change.
Absolutely.
I think that to cut them some slack, because the intent is obviously genuine, and it's entitled The Message to All Women. If the byproduct of this is actually it's a message to all men, and what it's doing is surfacing the issue, and that we're talking about it, and actually if the takeaway from this is actually men see this and realise that there needs to be change, then it isn't completely.
Here is what tone deafness looks like, guys.
Absolutely. Don't do that. Don't do that.
But if anything, I've definitely got my Halloween costume sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all come as it. All male panel dressed as bankers. Halloween is here. That wraps up this week's news show. Thank you.